The jet bridge hummed like a tired machine, and the cold air from the cabin spilled out in thin white streams, while Ben stood with his backpack unzipped, and the hard silver case resting by his shoe. The case had a small screen pulsing steady blue. Like a heartbeat, he kept his fingers on the handle, because the rule said, "Never let it out of your hand, not even for a second, sir. You'll have to step aside." The gate supervisor set her smile tight like tape, her eyes sliding to the case, then to his face, then back again. "First class is full, and we need your seat for a premium member. Go wait by the pillar, please." Ben looked past her into the warm glow of the cabin. Row 2A was there with a blanket folded into a perfect triangle. The flight attendant had already tucked a bottle of water into the armrest he had paid for that seat with. Months of night shifts and tutoring work and a scholarship. Travel grant that came with strict instructions: arrive Zurich by morning, deliver the package to the lab, hand to hand, no delays, no excuses. But the rule he carried in his chest weighed more than the ticket. The rule said, "Keep calm, keep polite, keep the chain I'm assigned to." He said, "Steady boarding pass," says confirmed from the corner. The man in the navy blazer spoke without looking up. "He can sit, coach ma'am, I've got a connection, and I'm platinum, he'll be fine." The supervisor's smile softened for the blazer and sharpened for Ben. "It's just one flight, sir, and you'll still arrive. We appreciate your understanding. Please move aside now." A ripple of eyes moved over him like cold water. Ben felt that familiar sting, the one that said, "Your no doesn't matter here." People were already watching, phones tilted just enough to catch a scene. He could hear the rumble of the pension tests. Outside, the faint thunder of rain on the window. He could hear his mother's voice to be careful, son, and be wise. He swallowed the heat in his throat. "Ma'am, I can't be separated from this case," he said, fingers tightening on the handle. "Chain of custody protocol. I must remain with it, or the cargo can't fly. Law requires a named courier, in cabin within visual range." "I'm the courier," the supervisor laughed, but without sound. "It's just a lunchbox, honey. You can take it to row 30 back there. It's still the same plane. It's not a lunchbox," he said, still soft. The blue light blinked the seconds away. "Please scan the tag. It's registered with your cargo manifest under my name and seat number A." Pause showed on her face like a crack. Someone behind Ben's side loudly, "Someone else," muttered. "Come on." She rolled her eyes and reached for the case with 2 fingers as if it were sticky. He drew it back an inch. Not rude, just firm. Her smile vanished. "Security," she said without turning. "We need a removal at gate 22. The word removal rang in his ribs the way a door slams in an empty house. The uniformed guard arrived and everything shrank. The jet bridge, the air, the choices the guard spoke with. The script voice, "Sir, please step back. Sir, please comply. Sir, do not obstruct boarding." Ben stood very still, then nodded once because he knew the rule. Protect the sample, protect the chain, protect yourself. He kept hold of the handle and stepped away. From the door, passengers flowed around him as if he were a broken sign. The man in the navy blazer brushed his shoulder with a satisfied grin like he'd solved a puzzle. A young woman in a hoodie mouthed, "Sorry," as she slipped past the edge of the blue light. Flickered. Steady, steady, steady. When the cabin door swung shut, the sound punched the air from Ben's lungs. He watched the latch bite. He watched the supervisor's shoulders drop. He watched the guard turn away as if the story had already ended. He checked the small screen on the case. 36.0 Celsius green band. Steady time to stability. 2 hours left. Margin, 94 minutes until failure. Without him, the numbers were not just numbers, they were a person's shot at walking again, a promise made to a research team across an ocean, a chance his mentor had trusted him with. "Because you are careful, Ben. You are the definition of careful." He walked to the window and stared at the plane while the rain drew quick silver lines across the glass. The tug was already hooked. The marshaller raised his wands, and the nose wheel lights winked awake inside the cockpit. A pale glow caught on 2 silhouettes. The captain lifted a hand, then set it down again. The jet did not move. A minute passed. Then to the tug sat like a patient bull, and still the plane did not budge. A small knot of ground crew gathered beneath the nose. A flight attendant appeared in the doorway, her face tight as thread. She spoke to the supervisor, who tilted her head in that small stiff way people do when they are pretending not to panic. The attendant's eyes flicked toward Ben, then away, as if contact were risky. The supervisor tapped her tablet harder and harder, a sound like fingernails on a desk. She glanced at Ben's case, then at the cockpit, then back to the tablet. She picked up a phone and turned her back, but Ben could still hear the shape of her voice. Not words, just edges, the kind of edges people use when they are explaining why something is not their fault. "Down On the tarmac, a mechanic climbed a short ladder and spoke into a handset. The captain opened his window. A crack rain pecked the metal like birds. Words flowed up through the thin gap and vanished. The mechanic looked toward the gate. The mechanic looked toward Bender. Blue light on the case pulsed the rhythm of a waiting heart. The screen ticked 92 minutes. The chain of custody line flashed green, held. But there was a new line now in amber, awaiting courier affirmation for departure. Ben felt the message like a tap on his spine. The sample wasn't just cargo. It was a promise. The aircraft system had recognized the sealed ID and flagged it. The plane had a question. The plane was literally asking, where is the person who said they would not let go? A man in a captain's cap stepped out to the top of the jet bridge. His voice cut through the thin air, calm but carved. Who removed the registered medical courier? From 2A, the supervisor lifted her chin. Irrelevant. We reassigned a seat. He can travel coach. The captain did not blink. Not irrelevant. We cannot push without the courier present and affirming per our compliance agreement. Also, there is a passenger on board who requires stabilized medication connected to that kit. Time sensitive now. Where is the courier? Heads turned as if pulled by one string. The supervisor's poise cracked just enough to show the fear underneath. She glanced at Ben, then away as if sunlight burned. She whispered something about policy. The captain didn't move. Ben stepped forward. The guard lifted a hand, then hesitated. Ben lifted the case, so the tag faced them both. The blue light washed his palm. It looked like ocean light, like something alive. I'm here, he said. Benjamin Cole, registered courier seat. To a chain intact. Time remaining 90 minutes. Permission to reboard. The captain's gaze landed on the case, then on Ben's face, steady as landing lights. Permission granted. Bring it now. The supervisor opened her mouth, but a sound burst from inside the cabin. Before any word could form, a sharp breath, then a shout, then a name that split the space like lightning. Dad, he's fading. Someone helped. The young woman in the hoodie reappeared in the doorway, her eyes bright with panic, tears threading down fast. He needs that kit. Please hurry. Ben didn't run. He moved with the exactness that had earned him trust, and the case hummed soft against his leg, the blue heartbeat steady. The jet bridge felt longer than any hallway he had ever walked. The captain stepped aside. The flight attendant reached for the latch, and the door gave way with a sigh like Relifand. Just as Ben crossed the threshold, just as the warm cabin air touched his face, the case gave a new sound, a crisp triple chime, and the blue light shifted to amber. The screen flashed, a single line: courier verification required within 60 seconds, or sample integrity risks 60 seconds to prove he was the only reason this flight could move, and maybe the only reason a father would keep breathing tonight. The sound of the triple chime followed Ben into the cabin like a warning bell from another world. Passengers turned in their seats, eyes wide, some annoyed, some afraid. The air carried that thick scent of panic that spreads when nobody wants to admit they feel it. The hum of the engines dropped an octave, as though the whole plane was holding its breath. Ben set the silver case on the fold-down tray of seat to his seat, the one that had started all this. The amber glow painted his fingers as the screen pulsed. 60 seconds, 59, the numbers, cutting away his choices one by one. Sir, you can't block the aisle, the attendant said too quickly, her words trembling. Please sit. Not me, Ben said, calm but hard. The system needs verification. Chain of custody. I have to log in now or the sample's compromised. Sample, someone muttered. What's in that thing? Another voice rose sharper. Is it dangerous? Ben's jaw tightened. He ignored the sting of suspicion and pressed his thumb against the scanner. The screen blinked. Courier identity. Pending his chest, sank. The system had locked him out when they forced him off the aircraft. The rule was absolute. Once the chain breaks, the courier must re-verify with both thumbprint and vocal code. 30 seconds left. The screen read. The attendant's face drained pale. What do you need? My code phrase, Ben said quietly in silence while I say it. But silence is the one thing people never give when they sense a secret. His words had been enough to ignite the cabin. Passengers leaned closer, some whispering, some reaching for phones, filming as if the truth were entertainment. In the front row, a child began to cry, a thin sound that cracked Ben's concentration. The woman in the hoodie shoved past a row, kneeling by a man slumped against the window, his lips gray, his breaths shallow. Her hands trembled over his chest. Dad, please, hold on. They have it. They have what you need. Ben looked from the screen to the dying man. The seconds bled away. 20 to 21. Sir, what's happening? The captain's voice carried from the intercom, sharp and unshakable. Is the kit active? Yes. Ben said, but without verification it will lock and spoil. Chain ends, integrity gone. A murmur surged like a wave through the cabin. The supervisor from the gate had entered behind him, her face set like stone. Enough of this drama, he's just a student playing hero, he doesn't belong here. Her hand shot toward the case, and the sound it made when Ben's palm stopped her was not loud but final. The kind of sound that meant there was no more patience, no more compromise. The cabin froze 10 seconds. The screen flashed. Ben's voice was steady though his throat burned. "Everyone stay back, I need silence." The captain himself pushed through the curtain, his presence cutting the noise like a blade. You heard him quiet now for the first time. The cabin hushed. Ben pressed his thumb once more. The amber glow paused, then demanded voice code required. Ben leaned close. The world funneled to the screen and the dying breaths at row 1. Courier called Benjamin, voice code 47. Delta, promise keeper. The screen held the words like a held breath, then shifted back to blue, steady pulse, steady hum. Chain verified, integrity secured. The case hissed open, revealing a sleek vial cushioned in silver foam filled with liquid that shimmered like captured light. The girl in the hoodie sobbed relief. "Please hurry." Ben lifted the vial with both hands, carrying it forward like something holy. The captain guided him to the man slumped in seat. The father's chest barely moved, his lips faintly blue. "This has to go into his med port," Ben said. "Does he have an implant?" The girl nodded frantically, brushing back her father's collar, revealing a small port near his clavicle. Yes, here." Ben slid the vial into the adapter, his fingers precise, though his heart thundered. The vial clicked, a sound small but absolute. A hum spread through the port and into the man's veins. Color stirred at his lips, his breaths deepened, ragged but stronger. The girl's sobs turned to broken laughter. "He's stabilizing." Ben whispered, his own knees almost giving way. The captain exhaled sharp, then turned to the supervisor, his words edged with fire. "You grounded my plane for a seat swap and almost killed a man in first class because you couldn't recognize authority when it didn't look like you." The supervisor's mouth opened, but no words came. Passengers shifted uneasily, shame spreading in the silence, some lowering phones as if guilty for watching instead of helping. Ben sat back in 2A, the case now empty but alive again, his hands still trembling, the blue light steady, but behind that calm surface a question was still alive. Why had the system flagged his case as more than cargo? Why had the captain known about the medical link before anyone else spoke? And most of all, who was this man that the vial had been meant for? Because the screen still glowed faint lines of text only Ben could see. Secondary directive pending courier confirmation. The plane had not moved yet, and Ben realized the mystery was only beginning. The cabin was still buzzing but softer now, or replacing suspicion. The man in seat 1C breathed steadier, his chest rising fuller, the color returning to his face. The young woman gripped his hand as if her fingers alone could anchor him back to life, tears streaking her cheeks. Ben sat rigid in 2A, his own pulse louder than the engines. The screen on the case glowed faint lines in quiet insistence. Secondary directive pending courier confirmation. The words pulsed like a secret whisper pressing against his skull. Why was there a second directive? He had never been told, never briefed. His training had been simple: deliver the package, secure the chain, no matter what. But now the chain itself was asking him to continue. The captain crouched beside the father and daughter, his voice low but carrying. "He's stable for now, but we'll need to coordinate medical on arrival." His eyes flicked to Ben. "And you just saved a life, but I need answers. What's in that kit really?" Ben's lips parted, but before he could speak, the supervisor snapped. "This is ridiculous. It's just coincidence. His little science project didn't save anyone." Her voice pitched high, tight, like glass about to break. Passengers hissed disapproval. Someone muttered, "We saw it with our own eyes." Another voice, hard with anger, "She nearly got him killed." The supervisor's face flushed, but she straightened. "None of this changes the fact he doesn't belong in first class. Policy is policy." The captain rose slow, deliberate, his shadow falling across her. "Policy doesn't ground an aircraft. Human lives do. If you cannot understand the difference, you have no place on my team." The silence that followed was heavy. The supervisor's mouth trembled, then pressed shut. She backed away, toward the galley, eyes darting anywhere but at Ben. The girl in the hoodie looked up from her father, her voice raw but fierce. "Don't listen to her. You were meant to be here. He's the reason my dad is breathing." Ben's hands clenched in his lap, the screen still glowing. "Courier confirmation required," he whispered to himself. But what's the directive? As if answering the screen shifted words, arranging into a new line. Deliver subject identity, secure transfer at Zurich. Ben's breath stalled. Subject identity, not cargo, not medicine, but a person. He spoke to the man in seat 1C, whose breathing had steadied, whose eyes fluttered open. The girl gasped. Dad, you're awake. His voice was faint but clear. I heard. The courier. You found him. His gaze fixed on Ben with unsettling certainty. Ben's chest tightened. Sir, you know me. The man's lips curved into the faintest smile. Not yet. But I know what you carry. Passengers leaned closer. Whispers rustled like wind in dry grass. The captain frowned, confusion etching deeper into his face. Mr. Hale, do you recognize this student? The name struck the cabin like a flare. Hale, it echoed instantly. Half the passengers gasped, some whispering into phones. Hale, the biotech magnate. Hale, the man whose company owned patents on treatments, whispered to change the world. Ben felt the weight of it, the way the blue light seemed to burn hotter. He looked at the man whose name alone could turn headlines. Hale's eyes, though weak, carried command. Courier, stay close. My daughter knows the rest. The girl gripped Ben's arm, her voice trembling. You don't understand. If my father dies, the cure dies with him. Everything we've built, every chance for people to walk again. You're not just carrying medicine, you're carrying the future. And now they know you're carrying it. To Ben's throat went dry. Who? The captain's radio crackled sharply, interrupting before she could answer. Tower 2, Flight 218, status delay, reported. Is there a security issue? The captain raised the handset, his jaw tight. Standby tower, we have a medical stabilization on board. But as he spoke, his eyes darted toward the dark window outside, rain streaking across glass, and beyond it, on the tarmac, two figures in reflective vests, not moving with the others, not guiding luggage, not checking equipment, just standing still, watching the plane. Ben followed the gaze and felt the chill crawl his spine because the case in his lap pulsed harder and the screen flickered a new line. Threat detected. Protect subject at all costs. The girl's grip on his arm tightened, like she had seen it. To her whisper, fierce, it's starting. They'll never let this plane leave the ground with him alive. The engines rumbled, a growl like a caged beast. The nose lights still dead, the jet frozen in place, and every passenger waiting for the next move. Ben realized this flight wasn't delayed anymore. It was trapped, and the trap was closing around him. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, but the plane remained frozen, as if chained to the ground. The passengers restless, whispering, phones, glowing faces pale with unease. Rain hammered the windows, streaking the outside world into warped shadows. Yet through the blur, Ben still saw them, two figures in reflective vests, standing too still to deliberate. Their posture wrong, their focus, unbroken eyes fixed on the aircraft like predators waiting for the right second. Captain lowered the radio slowly, his face grave. Ground crew reports no issue yet, but tower is questioning the delay. His gaze cut toward Ben. What exactly are we protecting? Ben looked down at the screen, still glowing steady blue. The message seared into it. Threat detected. Protect subject at all costs. His throat ached as he forced the words out. Not just cargo, sir. The subject is him. He tilted his head toward Hale, the man in seat 1C, whose breaths now steadied under his daughter's touch. Gasps rippled again, passengers murmuring Hale's name like it belonged in news, not in row 1. The girl squeezed her father's hand, her eyes locked on Ben. They'll try to finish what started on the ground. They won't stop until he's silenced. The captain's jaw clenched. He motioned the attendant, locked the cabin. No one in, no one out. The attendant's hands shook as she slid the latch on the door. The supervisor stepped forward, her face twisted with fear and stubborn pride. You can't just trap us in here. This isn't protocol. We should hand the boy and his toy to security. Let the authorities handle it. Ben snapped, sharper than he meant to. The moment I leave, the chain breaks. The vial was only stage 1. The directive says protect Hale until Zurich. He's the subject they want dead. The girl's voice cut through, trembling but unyielding. And if my father dies before Zurich, every trial, every cure, every patient waiting loses hope. Do you understand? He carries more than his name. He carries the cure itself. It's in his blood. The cabin erupted with whispers, some terrified, some awed. Ben felt the air thicken with realization. Hale wasn't just a magnate. He was the cure, a living vessel, and now everyone knew. From the cockpit, a metallic thud jolted the cabin. The captain spun his head. What was that? Another thud, sharper, closer. The passengers gasped. Ben's gaze shot to the window. One of the figures outside now moved toward the nose wheel, a tool glinting under the floodlights. The other raised a radio, pressing it to his mouth. Even through the storm, the intent was clear. They weren't mechanics, they were infiltrators. The captain cursed under his breath. They're stalling us, keeping us grounded. He turned to Ben. What happens if they get him off this plane? Ben's grip tightened on the case so hard his knuckles whitened. Then the cure never leaves this runway, and the world never knows the father hails. Weak voice rasped through the air, cutting the tension. You're the courier, not by accident. By choice we selected you because you don't break. Now you must finish what was started. His eyes burned, though his body sagged. Trusts no uniform. Trust only the chain. Before Ben could answer, a screech ripped through the cabin. The emergency hatch in the galley yanked from outside. Alarms blared, red lights pulsed. Passengers screamed. The supervisor staggered back, shrieking, "This is madness. We're under attack." Ben shot to his feet, the case heavy at his side, the screen flashing urgent commands. "Courier, protect, secure. Relocate." The captain barked orders to crew, but the sound was drowned by the metallic slam of boots hitting floor. As a masked intruder forced his way through the hatch, eyes cold, weapon raised. Passengers ducked, screams tangled with prayers. The girl shielded her father. Hallie gasped, his lips pale again. The captain stepped forward, but the gun barrel froze him. In place, the intruder's voice, muffled but sharp. "The courier comes with me now, or people start dying." Ben's heart pounded, his mind raced. Every eye in the cabin turned to him, the case pulsing blue like a beacon, like a target. He felt the rule, the one his mentor had drilled into him, pounding in his chest. Never let go, never surrender, never trust their deal. But with the barrel fixed on innocence, and the weight of a cure in his hands, Ben knew this wasn't just a choice about survival anymore. This was about betrayal and sacrifice, and one wrong move could kill more than a man. It could kill a future. The intruder stepped closer, finger tightening on the trigger, the cabin trembling with fear. Ben drew a breath and whispered the words only the chain could hear. "Directive override protocol Delta." The screen on the case blinked red, then green. The latch clicked open, a hidden compartment sliding into view, revealing something no one expected. A second vial, black instead of silver. Its glow sharp and dangerous, and the words etched across the display, "Countermeasure armed." Ben looked up into the masked eyes, steady at last. "You want me? You'll have to take us all." And the cabin went silent, because no one yet knew if the countermeasure was salvation or the end of everyone on board. The cabin was a frozen portrait of fear, every eye glued to the black vial, glowing with its eerie light. The masked intruder's hand wavered just enough to show hesitation. His voice cracked through the silence. "What is that?" Ben's grip on the case tightened, the red text pulsing on the screen. "Countermeasure armed, awaiting courier." Command. The glow cast his face in a strange light, half hope, half threat. He spoke low, steady. "It's the only thing standing between you and what you came for. Back down, or this whole plane pays the price." Gasps rippled through the cabin, passengers recoiling, some covering their mouths, others holding children tighter. The girl in the hoodie clutched her father's hand, whispering to him through tears, "Dad, please hold on." The intruder's voice sharp and bluff. "A student doesn't carry weapons." But Hale's weak voice rasped from his seat, carrying more weight than any threat. "That's no bluff, son. That's the failsafe. Only couriers are trusted with it. You underestimate him, and you doom us all." The intruder faltered, and for the first time Ben saw doubt in those cold eyes. But doubt wasn't surrender. The weapon still pointed at him. The captain took a step forward, his voice hard as steel. "Drop it now before you push him to use it. None of us walk away if you press him." The masked figure hissed between clenched teeth, but before he could move, the radio on his vest crackled harsh. "Abort the extraction. Too many eyes. Too much noise. Return now. Repeat. Return now." The intruder's posture shifted, hesitation giving way to frustration. He swung the gun toward Hale. "Then he doesn't leave alive." The girl screamed, covering her father. Ben's muscles moved before thought, his body throwing itself between the weapon and Hale. The world narrowed to a line of fire, and the pulsing glow of the black vial. "Courier command. Activate shield." Ben shouted into the case, his voice raw. The screen flared white, the vial's glow bursting into a thin shimmer like glass, walls rippling outward. The bullet fired a deafening crack, but when it struck the field it flattened to dust, drifting harmless to the floor. Gasps filled the cabin, disbelieving, terrified, awed. The intruder staggered back, eyes wide. Impossible. Ben's own chest heaved. The countermeasure, pulsing weaker, now burning through its limited charge. 1 shot left. He thought the words tasting of iron. The captain lunged. Seizing the moment, he slammed the intruder into the galley wall, the gun clattering to the ground. Passengers shouted, some emboldened, some terrified, but it was enough. Crew members rushed to restrain the man forcing his arms behind him. Ben collapsed into 2A, the black vial dimming in his hand, his pulse while the case screen flashing warnings. Countermeasure depleted, recharge unavailable. The girl knelt beside him, her face streaked with tears but her voice fierce. You saved him again, you saved all of us. Hale's gaze heavy with both gratitude and something darker met Ben's. This wasn't random, son. They knew exactly what was on this plane. They knew me and they knew you. The courier's chain was compromised before you even boarded. Ben's throat tightened. How? How could they know? Hale's eyes closed for a breath, then opened, sharp and pained. Because betrayal always begins inside someone close, someone trusted. The captain barked orders into his radio. Get security waiting at Zurich, reroute emergency services. We're not delaying this flight another minute. His eyes found. Ben, stay alert. Whoever's behind this isn't done yet. The engines roared as power surged. The jet finally rolling from its stall. Passengers clutched seats, some crying, some whispering prayers. The storm outside peeled back under the floodlights, the tarmac shrinking behind them, but inside the cabin suspicion now hung heavier than fear, because Hale's words were a blade that cut everyone at once. Betrayal inside someone trusted, and as Ben glanced around, he saw the faces of passengers, crew, and even the supervisor avoiding his eyes, and he knew the true enemy might not have been outside at all. And when he looked down at the case, the screen showed a new message that chilled him deeper than the storm. Courier, threat level elevated, identify the traitor before landing. The plane was airborne now, but the real fight had only just begun. The storm clouds broke apart as the plane rose into the night sky, lightning fading into silence. But inside the cabin, the storm had only just begun. The passengers whispering, frightened eyes darting the restrained intruder slumped in the galley, but the screen on Ben's case glowed steady words like a knife in his chest. Courier, threat level elevated, identify the traitor before landing. He glanced at Hale, pale but breathing stronger each second. His daughter clinging to his arm, the captain pacing tight steps by the cockpit door. Crew clustered near him as though standing closer meant safety, yet every one of them carried the weight of suspicion, because if betrayal had started inside, then someone here still carried it. Ben closed the case slowly, his heart pounding. We can't land blind. If the traitor's not found, they'll finish what they started the second the doors open. The captain's voice was gravel. You're saying one of my own is dirty. I'm saying someone sold this flight out. Ben shot back, and they knew enough to stall the chain of custody. They knew about Hale. They knew about me. His eyes swept the cabin, locking briefly on the supervisor, who stood apart, arms folded, lips tight. The girl's voice trembled, but cut sharp. He's right. They knew too much. It had to come from someone with access. The supervisor snapped, bitter. Don't look at me. You think I wanted my flight hijacked? You think I'd risk my job for this nonsense? Ben lifted the case, the blue light spilling across her face. You tried to force me off. You dismissed the manifest. You nearly broke the chain. You acted like you wanted me gone before the plane even moved. Why? Her eyes darted once to Hale, then away. Because first class is for paying clients, not couriers. The captain's tone hardened, answered the question. Her lips trembled a fraction too long. The silence told more than words. Then she spoke fast, sharp. You don't understand. I was told to make space, that's all, told by corporate to clear a seat for a priority passenger. I didn't know who, I just followed orders. Whose orders? Ben pressed. Her eyes darted again, not at the captain, not at Ben, but at Hale and his daughter, a flicker of fear before she forced her face. Still doesn't matter now. But Hale's weak voice broke the stillness. It does matter, because those orders didn't come from my company. They came from my enemies. Someone bought you, didn't they? The supervisor's shoulders slumped like a string had snapped, the mask cracking. I didn't think they'd go this far. They just said, keep the courier away from you just long enough to delay verification. They promised no one would get hurt. The girl's voice rose, shrill with fury. You nearly killed him. You nearly killed my father. Ben's blood boiled, but Hale lifted one trembling hand. Enough. Her betrayal is exposed, but punishment comes later. What matters now is the cure. Reaching Zurich, the captain signaled crew to bind the supervisor. Her protests, shrill but empty. I didn't mean this. I didn't mean. Her voice vanished under the click of screen on Ben's case flickered one last time. Threat neutralized, chain restored. Continue. Mission. The glow faded soft, as though the case itself could breathe again. Passengers exhaled as if released from a spell. Some clapped weakly, some whispered prayers. Hale leaned back, closing his eyes, the girl pressing her forehead to his shoulder, relief shaking through her body. Ben sat into her again, his hand still firm on the case, but his heart heavy. The words Hale had spoken gnawed at him. Betrayal always begins inside. It wasn't just the supervisor, it was the world he was stepping into, a world where even hope was currency and enemies would pay anything to keep cures locked away. The captain's voice over the intercom cut the silence, calm but resolute. Ladies and gentlemen, we've stabilized the situation. We are en route to Zurich. Estimated arrival 6 hours. Stay calm. Stay seated. This flight will not fail. A ripple of relief passed through the cabin, but Ben knew relief was only temporary. He looked once more at Hale, then at the girl, their eyes meeting hers, fierce with gratitude, his steady with a weight beyond his years. When Zurich's lights finally glimmered on the horizon, Ben whispered to himself. The lesson, the chain had burned into him. Sometimes betrayal shows you who the world really is, but it also shows you who you are, the keeper of the promise, the one who never lets go. The plane descended, wheels reaching for the earth, the mission intact, the cure alive, and though the scars of the night would remain, Ben knew he had carried more than a case. He had carried trust itself and proved it unbreakably, and when the doors opened at Zurich, the world would never be the same again. The end.